Hi, I'm Mariel Hemingway with my partner, Melissa Yamaguchi, and we are here with Out Comes the Sun. This is our third podcast, and we are super excited today to kind of what we wanted to do, and I'll clarify this, or maybe Melissa, you can clarify this a little bit, is we wanted to once a month, every few weeks, to sort of get grounded in what's going on, current events. And
Mhm.
this week, of course, well, last week, the passing of Heish was it was pretty monumental in the mental health arena. And it's interesting because I do want to talk about that a little bit because it was interesting. I posted something and it was interesting. Some of the reactions of, I think they came from actually not knowing really what had happened to her or what influence she was under,
Mhm.
and it's not a forgiveness to her for the things that went wrong in that day of hers that basically took her life. But it's an interesting conversation. So I don't know, we kind of wanted to start with that, sort of talking
Mhm.
about that because you'd kept me abreast of what was happening to her because I was so overwhelmed. I mean, you're there in LA, you saw things that were going on, and it was just, it was kind of, it took your breath away and makes you realize, wait a second, there's something going on. And I was a little upset today. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but I was upset. I was thinking about it today, and I thought to myself, there's been so many people that have either taken their lives or their lives have been cut short because of habits and things, and people in their lives, like it feels as though, and I don't know this for sure, it feels as though you know friends and loved ones aren't stepping up to say, hey, we you need to do something different. And maybe they did, maybe they did, and I hope they did. But
Mhm.
it feels like people are afraid to bridge this conversation, even with people that are clearly crying out for help, you know?
Mhm. It was sobering. It's sobering because you had a podcast radio interview that you had done with Anne 2 years ago. Is
Yeah.
that right? Was it
About
2 years ago?
18 months ago, 2 years.
Yep.
Yeah. Something like that.
And I remember distinctly at the time, once you had finished the interview, that you and Anne were discussing the need for continuing down the path of addressing trauma and working through trauma, and how it can be a lifelong journey, but is definitely needs to it should be a part of your everyday, as brushing your teeth, as doing your morning stretches, whatever. It's addressing and being taking your temperature check to see how you're doing. How am I feeling today? And at the time, um, I know I'll speak for myself. I won't, that when we had left that time, there was a sense that all was not well. And so then years later, to learn of this unfortunate demise of this, energetic, fun, lovable actress and figure in
Culture.
our culture
Yeah.
to be gone, it's so sobering, and it makes you pause and think of all of the luminaries in our lives. Um, look who I'm talking to right now. In our lives, who we've lost due to some tragedy, trauma, mental health, behavioral health issue, and hindsight, you looking back, thinking, well, where were the handlers? Where was everybody around these people? And we don't know what we don't know,
Right.
as you
And
mentioned,
and that's
but
so true.
it's
It
frustrating.
is frustrating. And the other thing, and you bring up such an incredibly important and poignant point, because trauma causes people to have mental illnesses of all kinds. I mean,
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
not necessarily a trauma that causes it, but very often, and I would say probably in Anne's case, it was trauma induced. Like she
Yeah.
had a unbelievable childhood when it comes to, I mean, abuse, neglect, poor, living out of, you know, I don't know, out of her car and, with her mother, and
Mm-hmm.
just really tough stuff that most of us don't have to deal with. And she would look at it, she was like, oh, we're so much alike, like, I was like, whoa, girl, no, you went through hell. And
Yes.
addressing that trauma, like you said, is it's a self responsibility, but also what happens with trauma is that it unfolds sometimes in a mental illness, but it also often in a mental illness, and a mental illness is also an addiction. That is a mental illness.
Yeah.
People need to realize that an addiction to drugs, to alcohol, to all of it, whatever, that is, I need something because I can't deal with this pain. She was self medicating. It's not an
Yes.
excuse. It's not an excuse for her ramming into somebody's house, nothing like that. But what I'm saying is, when we realize that the power of trauma, and
Mm-hmm.
and uh, the inability to deal with it, causes so many people to, go to drinking, go to drugs, go to something that just numbs them now.
Yeah.
And I know this from, not from experience, because fortunately my addiction was like exercise too much, or eat weirdly, whatever, just because of watching family members do just that. Their
Right.
childhood trauma, my sister's childhood trauma, led her to drink and to drugs, right? Just massive amounts. And it's something we also wanted to talk about. She was dealing with massive celebrity overnight
Yeah.
success that
Yeah.
causes people. I think that we, as, let's say we, I guess I'm a celebrity, but I feel like I'm just a regular person. So we, as regular people,
You're a luminary, my friend.
but you know what I'm saying? It's like, I think that we put them to a higher standard. We think, oh, that nothing can
Exactly.
touch them. And it can. Excuse me, I'm going to cough.
Well, it's also, remember on a couple of other podcasts when we've spoken to Mike McGrew and to Jeff Dill, representing the police force and then firefighters, we have this image of these strong characters who can withstand anything. Now, when we think about our uber athletes, our Olympic athletes like Simone Biles, who
Yeah.
said, "I can't. Hey, I can't do the next round because I'm not in the right headspace," and everyone was aghast. Or Naomi Osaka, who said,
Yes.
"I can't do any more interviews because I'm not in the right headspace." Lately, Jonah Hill came out and said, "I'm not going to be promoting my movies right now because the anxiety it causes me is so debilitating. I'm paralyzed. I can't do it. I've got to protect myself." There have been more people coming forward, and I think it at first the interviewers were being brutal to them when they were making these charges.
Statements.
Simone
Yeah.
Biles was just
Oh my
lacerated,
gosh, I
but
know.
now, as more people are coming forward and going, "Hey, hang on a minute. It is a struggle. I do have anxiety. I do have ADHD. I do have depression. I can't handle this right now." It's causing those that are not in that field of spotlight to say, "Me too. I mean,
Yes.
I struggle also." Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I mean, God bless the people that, I don't know why, every time I want to talk, I want to cough. Excuse me. Anyway,
I got you. I got
I
you. I know
know.
exactly how that feels.
um, yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. God bless the people that will come up and say, but I was so,
Hmm.
when Simone Biles said I couldn't do, I was so proud of her, and I was so
Yeah.
shocked at the response, like letting
Oh, I know.
letting American people down, and this, that, and the other thing. It was like, what? I mean, we have to look at athletes, celebrities, and athletes are celebrities, and sometimes celebrities are athletes. We have to look at them and see them as they've just, in fact, they might be more sensitive than the rest of us
Yeah.
because of their sense. An actor. I mean, somebody like Jonah Hill, who looks at characters and is taking a deep dive, or Anne Heche, who takes a deep dive and looks at a
Hmm.
character. That's a very raw place to be. I know that from
Oh, yeah.
experience. You get into a place where you become at some level, not completely, because you're an actor, you're playing a role, but at some level, there's a part of you that becomes a character, right? There's a little part of you that's
Right.
like, okay, over here I've become, and that leaves you in a raw and open space. And 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 also with athletes, I mean, think of the training and the discipline and the and your body is like so sensitive and so perfect and but finely tuned. And a Ford, we have a Ford F-250 1979, like you can, this thing can go anywhere. But if you have a high performance car, right? You have one of
Yeah.
those incredible, like $1 billion cars, and they're super sensitive. So something goes wrong and the whole thing goes off, right?
It's a
And
great
that's,
analogy. That's a great
yeah, and
analogy.
that's, we sort of think that they're supposed to be level and wonderful and able to handle every situation. What they're good at. But it doesn't mean that, oh, great, I'm going to go
That's
on,
right.
I'm going to have a press conference with 1 million people. It reminds me of when I went to the Cannes Film Festival. I was 18 years old. I went with my father. I'm in Cannes, France, and we go to the premiere of Manhattan, this movie that I was in, and I was nominated for an Academy Award, and we're going to Cannes, and it's a big deal. They love Woody Allen in Europe, whatever. I go in, I'm 18 years old. I go down this red carpet and then up these stairs, right into this very grand theater. And there are what feels like 1 million, which was probably, I don't know, 100 I don't know, maybe it was 200 photographers. That's a lot of people with a camera focused on you, going Mariel,
Yeah.
Mariel, Mariel, Mariel. And I was like this kid. I didn't know what was going on. I was, trying to look at everybody and please everyone because it was people pleaser. That's a whole other story. And well, I got into the movie, and it was overwhelming. I mean, overwhelming. I'd never experienced anything like it. I sit down in the theater, we watch the movie, I'm watching my dad. My heart starts to beat because I can tell that the movie is coming to a close. And my heart starts to beat, and I think, I can't do it again. I can't go back out. I
Really.
can't go through those people. And I had a panic attack. I've never, I don't think I've ever had one quite as severe as that. And I looked at my dad and I just burst into tears. I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't go down there. So they got security and we went out a side way. And it wasn't like, oh, I was such a fancy person, but that's the thing. We don't realize that
That's it.
looks so glamorous and so fun. And it's so scary, especially as a kid, but it's scary. It's scary because it's like it's like, people want a piece of you and it's
They want
frightening.
a piece of you. Yeah.
And that,
Well,
yeah,
Marin, you and I talked about something recently where when your sister was thrust into the
yeah,
limelight. Also, I mean, your upbringing in Idaho.
right,
You had this famous last name, but you had a normal upbringing. You were like a kid on a bike,
yes,
riding. And we talked
yeah,
about that. How your life was really, and so even though the name was famous, you were in a. Talk a little bit about where you grew up and what it was like growing up, even though you were Hemingway in your
yeah.
town.
Well, yeah. I mean, now it's very fancy. It's very woo shmoo shmooey right now, because I think everybody moved here during COVID. But when I grew up, it was a small town. It was a little western town, and when I say that, I really mean it. It was like the local bar, the this and that. It was a small town. People, there was some wealthy people, but mostly the people that supported the community that were the workers. They were like people that loved to ski or they loved the mountains, and they were just normal regular people. And my mother is from Idaho. So Idaho was like a part of my life. I was a girl who rode
Mm-hmm.
horses bareback and went swimming in the river and, rode my bike into town. I lived 7 miles out of town because your parents were going to take you every time you wanted to go into town, right? So I would drive
Yeah.
7 miles in, 7 miles home. And my life was, I mean, I loved it. I loved the mountains. I loved being in this environment. It was simple. It was, I hitchhiked when I was a
Yeah.
kid, but everybody that picked me up, I knew. When I
Yeah.
first got tickets, when I got my license, I knew all the cops. And they'd be like, Mariel, you better slow down, right? Now I don't know anybody because they're
Yeah.
12. But anyway, but it was a small town. So then when
Yeah.
my sister goes off, and it was kind of like the craziest thing. So my sister was this, yeah, she was an amazing skier, but she was a party girl. My sister Margot started drinking very, very early on. I learned that much later in life. I should have guessed it. I mean, there was a lot of drinking going on in our house, and we were allowed to drink because we were very modern, and I don't know. My parents, my father had been, grew up in Paris anyway. But she started drinking, and she was like this amazing skier, but she would often ski drunk. And but she was a wild and crazy girl. She was going to the bars at
Hmm.
13 and had a fake ID, the whole thing. Anyway, so there's it's a good story. So there's this big event that's going to happen in Idaho. Evil Knievel is going to jump the Snake River. And I don't know if
I remember that.
I don't know if, yeah, you might remember. I don't know if anybody who's listening will remember that. But anyway, it was a big deal. He's literally jumping over the Snake River. It's this big, canyon, and he's gonna jump it. Well, Margot somehow gets connected to the PR people for Evil Knievel. So she comes back from hanging out with them and says to my parents and all of us that she's going to go do PR for Evil Knievel. We're like, right, okay, yeah, sure you are. Whatever. Sounds crazy. She goes off. Evil Knievel jumps the thing. He fails and takes like a parachute down or something. But anyway, she kind of takes off for a few weeks, right? Now she had done this. She was a lot older than me. She was probably 18, 19 at the time. I think 19. And she took off for a couple weeks, kind of checked in like I'm okay. I'm hanging out. Well, now it's fall. This event has taken place in the late summer. It's fall. I'm in the market because I would drive, actually, excuse me, illegally because my mother was sick with cancer, and sometimes I would drive into town, and get groceries. My dad happened to be with me at this one time that I went to the grocery store, and my dad let me drive because he wanted to make sure that I was doing it okay. We're in the grocery store. We're gathering up, parsley and this and that and whatever we needed, and we're in the checkout line, and I look at the magazines next to the checkout, and they're on the cover of People magazine is a girl that looks an awful lot like my sister, only her name is spelled Margaux. Now, Margot, as far as I know, my sister, and by the way, her hair was blonde, and she always had dark hair. Not dark, dark, but like brown hair, right?
Yeah.
And so this girl is like bleach blonde with this very fancy Margot Hemingway, and I'm like, wow, it looks so much like Margot. And I said to my dad, I said, I'm 12. I said, I think that's Margot. So he takes the magazine. He's like laughing out loud in the middle of the grocery store, and everybody's like coming over to him, going, "Oh my gosh!" Anyway, so he's laughing because she's telling the story that she was conceived on a bottle of Chateau Margaux in Paris. And that's why she was named Margot, Margaux. Well, she was actually named Margot, but but from then on, that was her story, and it was literally from that moment of seeing her on a magazine. She was constantly on covers of magazines: Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Vogue France, Vogue Italy, Vogue Russia, Vogue, all over the
Yeah.
place, all over the world. And then she was on the cover of Time magazine. Now, for being the first supermodel to make $1 million. Now, this all happens within a year. That kind of notoriety sounds, oh,
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. You're making $1 million. You're beautiful. You're traveling the world. You're jet setting around. You're going to Studio 54. But she started to unravel. She'd fallen in love with the guy that had kind of discovered her. They got married. It wasn't the best of marriages. It was just like this sea of craziness, really. I mean, it sounds
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, but and she was, people were after her. They wanted a piece of her,
Oh yeah.
because she was this new look, the big bushy eyebrows, this amazing face. She was so incredibly photogenic, but it takes its toll. I told a very long story to
Yeah.
get to that point.
No, but it's important because Mariel, the thing that this relates to so much that we see in the news currently is we're seeing all these athletes, whether it's NBA, NFL, that are getting arrested for
Yes.
drunk driving, and it keeps happening over and over again. And it's not a one off.
No.
This is happening because we're bringing this talent in, whether it's through modeling, acting, singing, performance on some level. We're bringing these entertainers in, and I'm taking a collective hold here, but we're holding them up, and they're not being prepared for the notoriety and the fame and all of the hands out once you get there. Because people
Absolutely.
who, so it's a
Not to
lot to
mention,
take on. There was a
I
young,
mean, not to mention these poor athletes that get so much money, right? They're young
yeah,
guys and they're super talented. They get so much money, and then who comes out of the woodwork? But every family member and cousin, and
every
and
cousin you didn't know you
yeah, and
had. Yeah,
everybody who says they knew you when, right? It's a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
pressure. It's a lot of pressure.
Oh yeah, and recently June of this year, 2022, an actor by the name of Zachary Levi was interviewed, and I took great interest in the article because Zach at one point worked with my husband and me in our salons, and his grandmother was a frequent client of our salon, and he said in there that he at the age of 37, 5 years ago, he realized that he wasn't handling childhood trauma, and so he was constantly running from it and leaning on, and I'm revealing his article, not a private issue here, but he was leaning on sex, drugs, booze, whatever it took to numb the
Yeah.
pain. And I was so proud of him for finally coming out, because he made it, he did had the movie Shazam and did pretty well with it, and he's got some notoriety from other work he's done. He's an excellent singer and dancer as well as actor. He came out finally and said, I'm running, and I don't know where I'm running. I don't know to where I'm running, and I don't know from what I'm running until I slow down long enough to pay attention. And this is the need. This is why when this tragedy took place with Anne Heche, and you and I were discussing it, it's so prevalent in our industry that the constant need. Mariel Hemingway Foundation. We generated this foundation. We co-founded it. You're the foundation because we knew there was a need.
Yes.
And to that end, I'd like to mention that just recently, in this month of August, this the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law. Now, there's a lot to uncover with it, and I don't want to bore anyone with the. I'm a big, huge political junkie, and I don't want to bore anybody with it. But there's some caveats of it that are important to highlight for what we're working on. Is that there's a cap on the Medicare, the prices for people's medication up to 2,000 max per year for senior citizens, and we have a lot of senior citizens who need a lot of medication who can't get it, not only for whatever their physical ailments are, but their behavioral and
Yes.
mental health needs also. But it's addressing the needs. It will be a continued push and fight for all of us in this industry trying to get help, but it's something that we need to pay attention to as a nation, because it's opening the door for more help for us in mental and behavioral health issues, and
100%.
it's important.
Well, and the whole kind of medical model is not designed for behavioral health. We're
Right.
incredible when it comes to emergency care. We're incredible, at heart transplants and this and that. But when it comes to behavioral health, we treat many of the people that are homeless that really have behavioral health problems, we
Right,
treat them
right.
like
Mm-hmm,
criminals. We treat
mm-hmm.
people that come in with addiction problems like criminals. We treat, in the emergency room. And in the emergency room, there's not a decent protocol yet for people to really be directed to the right place. And then what is the right place? They don't even know.
Right, right.
That's where the Mariel Hemingway Foundation, the MH Foundation, comes into play. I want to be able to say, I want to be able to say to the hospitals, look, here, we're your index. You go here,
Mm-hmm.
you plug in this person's needs, and we'll try to direct you to someplace where they will get
That's right.
care, because the old model of sending somebody to an institution, and my sister was sent into, not Margot, but my oldest sister was sent to institutions all the time. They don't, they, they don't always not work, but for the most part, they're incredibly scary, right? They're just like
Mm-hmm.
you think. They're scary,
Yeah,
and they're not designed for every level of psychotic break, of this, of that. There's so many different levels to this. So we
yes.
have to find a way to create a resource, like we keep on saying, a resource that says, okay, I've got somebody who's not super super bad, but is kind of borderline, and needs therapy, needs this, needs physical stuff, needs, I don't know. It is complicated. I've kind of I've
Mm-hmm.
taken off a big bite of something. We both have. But I think that
Yeah,
it's doable. I think it's just to be able to say, look, if you feel this way and you want this kind of help, or want some kind of help, this is the kind of help that's available in your area. And it just, I just, we got to keep talking. We got to keep breaking down the stigma, because when we talk about these celebrities, we've got to quit taking, we've got to take them off the pedestal, but not take them off the pedestal in a vicious and negative and cruel way. And that's how kind of in the entertainment world is how it is. It's like you get your 15 minutes of fame, maybe
yeah.
20, and then they are
And knock you. Yeah,
dying to take you
to
down,
knock you down.
to
Yeah,
knock you down and
but God,
make you
it's not
feel
the
so
end.
small.
And it's not the end all be all.
No.
If I can celebrate your amazing acting abilities, your brilliant singing abilities. But does that mean that I have to translate into your parenting, your
Right.
partnering, your business acumen? It's just this is this one area I want to celebrate about you, right?
Right.
And so what we do is we have equated in our communities good marketing by some people, but we have equated wealth and celebrity with good and perfect.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to us looking at them from the outside. And it's not fair to those in the middle of it, like, ho, hold up. I didn't say I was a perfect mom and dad. I didn't say I was a perfect wife or husband, perfect son or daughter. I'm just a really good actress.
Yeah.
I'm a really good athlete. And that's enough, right? But there's something else. And I'm bringing a lot of our conversations as friends into this, but I think some of them are so important that you and I had the good fortune of having you in my life, and we talk so frequently that some of our stuff, I don't want you to think I'm secretly taking notes with all of our conversations, but some
Oh
of the
no, I
stuff that
love
we
it.
talk about is so worthwhile to share. And one of the things that you brought up was, this spiritual connection.
Yes.
And there was a time in our lives when, and this is not a religious push, but there's a time, it's an acknowledgement that there's a time in our life when faith and family were at the forefront of a lot of our decisions
Yes.
and our progress.
Yes.
And as we migrated away from family, the family farm or the family community, and we lost that sense of community when everyone knew your name and someone could pick you up and take you home and you knew everyone and the
Yeah.
cops knew you and so forth. When we lost that sense of community, and we oftentimes with that came this loss of some spiritual connection, whether it was frequenting the church or the spiritual connection of with family sitting around making a soup together, or quilting sewing the quilt, whatever that is, we've lost it. And don't you, well, you and I talked about how detrimental that's
Oh,
been
it's
to us
it's
as
I
as
think I think there is a real break, and it's not about, oh, I don't go to church anymore, though that may be a piece
right.
of it. it's that belief in something greater than ourselves that there. I think this sea of social media, while wonderful and exciting, and we can connect with
Mhm.
people all over the world, great, that's a positive. But the negative is that we believe in that becomes our belief system instead of
Right.
waking up in the morning and praying or meditating or whatever you do, your breathing technique, but connecting with that thing that, because I think, growing up for me, it was the outdoors. I'm very much a pantheist. I really think that God is in the leaves and the trees and the rivers flowing. And, I'm a big believer in God, but I believe that he shows himself in the grandeur of nature. That's just my belief. It's how,
Mhm.
I function. And I've never lost that spiritual connection. And I think, when I look at my sister, Margot, who took her life, I think she was grappling to really take
Yeah.
hold of that spiritual connection. And I think it might be one of the reasons why our mental health is spiraling down, because there's nothing to grasp onto except possibly some internet something, and that you can't hold that in your hands. You
It's
can't.
not tangible. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
enough.
it's not enough, and it doesn't make you feel loved. It's not love that
No.
you're receiving from a post, a like, yeah, you get that hit of dopamine, but it's not, it doesn't last.
It
It's
fades very
such an
quickly. Yeah.
addiction. I mean, talk about an addiction. And with addiction, it's always kind of, you're always looking for that first high, that first hit or something. So I'm told.
Hmm.
But and it's the same thing with social media. It's like this thing
Yep.
that you keep looking for. Oh, I want that. I'll be perfectly honest. Last week when I posted that thing about Annie, I had no idea that it would, it took off. It reached, I don't know, 200,000 people, and all these likes and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And I had to watch myself. You think, oh, and it had nothing to do with me, right? So I post this week and I get 3 likes. No, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean. It's like reality hits, and I have a healthy understanding that that is not real. It's wonderful, and I'm grateful for the people that follow me. It's so magnificent. I love them. I'm so grateful. Like
Hmm.
they want to show up because they're showing up for what we're doing, and they're showing up, right? And I appreciate that, but they're not my family. It doesn't feed my soul. My mornings feed my soul. My prayers, my belief in nature. That's my ability to stay grounded is my belief in something. And I think spirituality, and our loss of it, our loss of feeling connected, and maybe that's really what it is. And I think COVID did that.
It is. It is. And connection is the key word here. Because when you are connected to something outside of self, then it fuels the purpose, the reason to get up out of bed. When my 2018, my mother became
Yeah.
ill, and I was taking care of her. And every morning, aside from the fact that I have 2 children and a husband that I am completely and totally dedicated to taking care of and love them very much so, I was really driven every morning to get out of bed and go make sure that my mom was good, to take care of my mother. So it was this drive outside of me. So if I had a headache, I don't remember if I ever had a headache. I'm sure after when my mother finally got better, I think I collapsed into a pile of leaves because I was just overwhelmed by how much I'd pushed my body. But it was this drive outside of me and my aches and pains for, in my mind, a greater good. In the tie of community, whether we are tied by bloodlines, by geographical lines, by belief systems, or even by pain. When we are tied to others, when we are connected to others, it gives us the sense of belonging. We are not isolated individuals. We are pack animals, and we need to be surrounded by this spiritual, loving connection. And, I think that as all it takes, I don't want to be flippant and say all it takes. I think what will help facilitate this is this reminder from the Outcome the Sun podcast and from Wondermind podcast and from the other podcasts that are out there that are reminding us that we are good and okay, and we
Yes.
have to reconnect to who we are
Yes,
because
absolutely,
we're good.
absolutely. And you brought up something so important. I'll probably end it because we've run out of time. But um, you know that the fact that you are doing that for your mom, many people that are suffering from kind of can't get out of that hole, maybe not the
Mm-hmm.
deepest depression, because it's very hard to pull yourself out of that, but oftentimes if you have any cognitive ability to make a shift and make a different choice, the best choice a person can make is to go help another person, because it's
Yep,
not you. It becomes about
that's right.
something more than you. And
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean you don't take care of yourself. It means you quit focusing on the inside. You quit focusing on the brain.
That's
It's
right.
that kind of Buddhist mentality of like, the thinking mind is a problem sometimes, right? We all
Right.
wake up in the middle of the night overthinking something, that you wake up and you go,
Yeah.
Jesus, I couldn't sleep for 3 hours because of that. But that's the
Right.
thing. But when shift that energy to helping somebody else, to just
Mm-hmm.
it changes you. You don't it you quit acknowledging your own pain, because you're also not thinking about it all the time. It's like, oh,
That's
because
right.
sometimes boredom will put you into a place of, well, I still ache, I still this, I still that, blah, blah, blah. But when you focus on something else that's not you, that's when your energy expands. And I think it's very healing and fabulous.
Yep.
Anyway, I hate to wrap us up because this is such a good conversation. I think that we have to do this again and again and again.
We will. No doubt. No doubt.
Yes, well, that's it for Out Comes the Sun today. And this is a conversation to be continued, because it's super important. And I think it's very good that we speak every morning, because we come up with some pretty good, darn good things. So thank you so much for listening to us today. We don't have an ad for you, but perhaps next week we will. Lots of love to everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Out Comes the Sun. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, on Apple, and on YouTube. And you can donate to the Mariel Hemingway Foundation at the marielhemingwayfoundation.org. And I want to spell Hemingway for you, HEMINGWAY.org. I only say that because a lot of people put two M's, and that just won't work. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, you can go to the donate button at the bottom, and it will take you right to a link with the QR code. And if you go to marielhemingway.org, you can also press the donate button and be able to donate to the foundation, which is designed to help guide people towards finding the right solutions for their mental health issues. That is my goal. I'm just trying to raise money so I can come up with an app and a website that has all the information you could possibly want to know about mental health and where to go. But we are in the process of making that happen, and your donation means so much to us. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.